Hey YouTube, it's Steve again from Rescape 2.0. Today, I've done like 3 videos today. Ideas keep coming, and I gotta do a video on them while I have them. Otherwise, I'll forget, or all my thoughts on idea will go away. I won't be there when I make a video, so I gotta do them when I get them. So here's one. I'm probably gonna title it Outside the Matrix. And the reason it's called Outside the Matrix is because, okay, so the world we live in today, as of like today, the date today, is quite the peculiarity. If you took all the humans ever to exist and put them all in today, most of them probably would go insane. Now, the issue here, first of all, the technology we have right now hasn't been around, some of it for a year, most of it, just for a few decades. And even like modern sensibilities like, sewer treatment plants, electricity, that's, just a century or two, 2 centuries ago. Basically, you've got to go back to the 1700s before the pre-industrial age, before a lot of this stuff goes away. Now, without judgment, you could say that outside the matrix, inside the matrix are just different, but there's specific things that cause being in the matrix. It makes it seem like it's better when really it's a whole lot worse. And so let's go way back. Let's go the majority of human history, like you can say like, Sumeria and the Egyptians and Babylonians and Syrians, and you can go back a little bit further, because into Mesopotamia and like the cradle of civilization, all that. Even that, look, again, I'm not a historian, I'm not precise about this, but I'm pretty sure it's about 6,000 BC. Basically anything before 6,000 BC starts to get into the, you got pottery and arrowheads, and maybe some herbalism, but, big things that haven't been created yet. Actually, but I've learned recently that's actually not true. But anyway, so let's go back. The majority of human history took place before that. Because you got to think, if what we know as humans, if we've been around, 100,000 years, and then 6,000 BC was 8,000 years ago. Well, the majority of this, almost all of human existence, was in villages, basically in the wilderness, and everybody's fighting for survival. Now, it doesn't sound like a great thing knowing that you could die at any point in time, any moment, at any point in your life, or your children could, or your wife could, or something like that. But really, that's the way we were, evolutionary designed to live. And so you'd think that we would be happiest existing in an environment that our bodies and minds were designed to live in, which is nothing like what we're living in now. And the only reason that what we're living now seems any normal at all is because we've all been born into it. So it's like in the movie The Matrix, if you're born in the Matrix, it makes sense. But if you're born natural, then you look at the Matrix and you're like, holy shit. And that's what most humans would do. So let's just go back 10,000 years ago. So in some places there are still technology and civilizations, but a lot of the world there's not. So let's go back before real civilization and how you would define civilization. And my sister posted this on Facebook, and I thought it was pretty brilliant. Basically, you can tell when civilization is about to form in a culture or location because you'll see that the skeletons of the people in that area at that point in time, they'll have femur bones, their big bone in their leg above their knee has breaks that have been healed. Now what this means, in normal survival, from like 10,000 BC to 99,000 BC, if you broke your leg, let's go back further, 50,000 BC, if you broke your leg, you're dead. So if you see a femur bone healed, that means they broke the leg and survived, which means that someone had to carry them out, and someone had to set the bone, tend the wound, feed them while they're recovering for months. And then, so all this shows a level of sophistication, at least in cooperation, if not in technology, that's necessary for civilizations to form, because basically the beginning of civilization is when people start working together and accomplishing things that, individually we couldn't do, even though you may have villages or family units and things like that. But then, even in those situations, you have 25% surplus of food so that 4 people could take care of a 5th person and not starve themselves. It's a lot more difficult than you'd think. And the whole environment, because of this situation, is all completely different. Like, it's really hard. Like, the more I learn about how people lived back then, it keeps over and over again, I keep finding things that blow my mind. First thing, again, let's bring up the present moment again. Because back then, you had to be in the present moment almost all the time. And it wasn't because you're spiritually aligned. It's literally because if you don't, you're dead. It's like, if you're going to go up against nature to get a piece out of it, however way you want, and nature's constantly trying to kill you, if you're not present all during when you could die, which is pretty much all the time, you're going to die. So from birth to death, not like the way we've been trained to not be in the present moment, they were trained to be in the present moment just by the nature of their environment. So it's also true for even today for animals. Basically, anyone who lives in wildlife, like, you want to know why animals are always in the present moment, this is largely a similar circumstance. So And even now, if you go out in the woods, a lot of people do this. You go hiking by yourself, or do the Appalachian Trail. After you've been there a few days, if you're camping, it's just you, and you're out in the wilderness, and you're doing whatever, you'll be present. Like, being in the woods will make you present. And so it would make sense that in a time before buildings, where you're indoor all the time, then that would even help more, because you're in situations like nature by itself will make you present. So, and then like I said before, in the psychic abilities, when you're present, you'll find out that you have psychic abilities that you didn't know you had just because you're in the present moment. And so what you found, a lot of these people, and I have found people publicly that are teaching this. Most of the things I found out were not people teaching this publicly, but I'm going to say it here now because I don't care. If you think I'm crazy, I don't care. So one of them, if you've got the entire population being psychic, first of all, let's back up. Without civilization, if everybody's fighting for survival, there can't be a hierarchy. Because if anybody puts themselves above anyone else, everybody will look at that person and be like, you might die just as easily as we'll die. Why should we look up to you? It's like, you better look after yourself, not after us. You got to take care of yourself. You might die. And that's everyone to everyone. So, and even if you talk about like the bubonic plague in the 1300s, one of the beginnings of the idea of all people are created equal, in the Declaration of Independence for the United States, that kind of thing started during the bubonic plague and things like that, because they would look and they would see nobility, like the lords and ladies, and also the priests. They're supposed to be the holy people that can heal. They die in the exact same proportion as everybody else dies. And so that makes you scratch your head and be like, well, if they die like we do, maybe they're not as, badass as we think they are. And so it's that kind of thing. But, 50,000 years ago, it was everybody. Everybody was dying, could die all the time. So you couldn't have a government. Like, if someone tried to be a pharaoh or a king, it wouldn't even make sense, because you can't rule over people if you're trying to survive yourself. So when you have, the thing with government, any kind of power hierarchy can only take place after consideration. Stopping consideration becomes no longer a luxury, because then you can stop and consider that other people are above you when they're really not. It's just illusions, and that's the beginning of the matrix. The other thing about government institutions, when you start having court of laws, assuming that everybody's psychic, like I'm telling you, because they're in the present moment all the time, and humans naturally have psychic abilities, one of the things that psychic abilities can do is you can tell if someone's lying to you. Like, factually, you can tell. You can't, if someone's in a different location and thinks about doing something to you, you'll know about it. And so there's no secrets with anybody. And the only reason we have like rules of law and like courtrooms, you have witnesses on the witness stand that have to swear to tell the truth. But if we were all psychic, nobody would have to swear that, and there wouldn't even be courtrooms, because if somebody did something wrong, the whole community would know exactly when they did it, because they're all in the present moment. So it's a completely different way of living. So you don't have hierarchy, you don't have governments. Not only can you not have them, but they're completely unnecessary. And there's other things too, like when we talk, we babble, we move our mouths and make sound, but in the present moment, it's really hard to hear words in the present moment, because what you're hearing is the sound of the words as they're made. And, if you have a really strong mind, you can listen to people talk in the present moment, but it's much easier to communicate psychically. And when you're in the present moment all the time, you can hear the person talk and understand what they're saying, the meaning, because you don't remember the word they just said because it's in the past, but the meaning's in the present. And so the meaning of the words, you hear them, but you're also picking up on it psychically as both. So there's a lot of different ways to communicate. If the men are out hunting and something happens in the village, they'll know immediately, because their connection with the people back home, and it's independent distance. Like I talk about the psychic abilities, you can go anywhere at any point in time instantaneously if you have that ability, because you don't go anywhere, because that's in the future. And so everyone, especially if you bring in the love thing, if you're in a family of people, are always aware of each other and what each other's doing. And that's, again, taps back into the fact they have to survive, and someone's in trouble, everybody has to know pretty quick, or that person's probably going to die. And precog is another thing too, when you're in the present moment. And like I said before, about how you don't know the next millisecond, you have no idea. So you think if there's danger, it makes sense to consider it ahead of time and plan accordingly. But if you're always in the present moment, how does that help you survive more? And it comes back to the intuition thing. But one of the psychic abilities, one of the first psychic abilities, at least that I developed and that most people develop, is that it's precog, because the present moment is actually the safest place to be. But one of the ways you know that you're safe is because just because you're in the present moment doesn't mean you can't be in a different location in the present moment. So if you think of a loved one, you're actually thinking of them in that moment somewhere else. And then let's say a predator or some, avalanche or something is going to come at you, you have to react right then. Like when it's coming at you, you have to already be reacting. That happens in the present moment. It can only happen if you know that they're going to attack you simultaneously when they're attacking you. So there's got to be a little bit of a to match what they're doing and make it instantaneous, especially if you're a scientific materialist and the neurons have to travel from your brain. You have to sense it and then hit the brain hits the muscles or whatever. None of that can happen. You can't have that happen. So the ability to sense what people are going to say and do before they do it is easy, but then to sense everything around you, if something's absolutely going to take place somewhere in your vicinity where you're able to sense, you'll know before it takes place. And it doesn't happen right away. Like one of the things I can do when somebody is giving me their email address at work, if I type down their email address, they'll say the numbers and the name, and I'll immediately know if it's Yahoo, Gmail, MSN, whatever. Before they say any of it, I can already tell what the email address is, just because I do it a billion times a day, every day. And so that's just a stupid example. But you can see how that, they're giving me the email address and I'm already at Gmail, even though they haven't said it yet. So if a tiger, is stalking you don't know, or a puma, attacks from the trees or whatever, and you may not sense it, but right before it attacks you, you know it's about to attack you. And that's the psychic ability you get when you're in the present moment. And everybody had that. You had to have that kind of thing to survive back then. And I know this all sounds crazy because we've all been born and raised in the Matrix, and we have no idea that this could even be a possibility. So, or maybe some of you do. If you don't, I hope you're watching this video and believe me, because if I had known this like even a year ago or like 5 years ago, my mind would have been fucking blown. But it makes sense. It makes sense. If you're going to have like survival of the fittest, you can't survive unless you know what's going to happen ahead of time, because you can't react. If you react after the fact it happens, you're already dead. Like things just happen too quick in nature. Just nothing you can do about it. There's a simultaneous thing. Tai Chi teaches this. It's called matching. Basically, when they're moving, you're moving. And they start moving, you start moving at the same time, because there's no like beginning or end. So you match them. And it has to do with timing, which is another thing of, sensitivity that you build up. You feel psychic sense or whatever. Timing in the present moment, timing is a sense. Like it has a 5 seconds in the present moment has a feel to it. So in the moment. So there's all sorts of other stuff too. Oh my gosh. I've only highlighted some of them. But the whole world back then was completely different. And we have no idea now. And honestly, think about it. If you're trying to control a population of people, the easiest way to do that is to make sure they have everything they need, so there's nothing for them to strive for. At the same time, make them scared that they're going to be homeless, so they're always on edge. And then say, oh, by the way, if you don't want to be homeless, you have to do these things. And then we're at work, and it doesn't seem like work's a bad thing compared to getting hunted by a tiger. But you've got a choice. You can be either, in modern times, you can be dead inside because it's not our purpose to be like this. And so we're dead. We're safe, but we're dead. Or you could be risking your life every day and being alive, which I would much rather do. Even if you have a lower life expectancy, at least you did something. Because like if you're talking about the spirit coming along in the present moment, let's say you build shelter. Like, okay, so we get houses built for us. But when you build shelter, like it's awesome because you only need to live through one thunderstorm without shelter to know why you need shelter. And you're not just building shelter, but you're building your shelter. And so it's different, unique than any other shelter because it's got your signature on it from your spirit. And the amount of, especially in the present moment, the amount of intensity of the creativeness in building this thing, it really is the apex of human existence, doing things like this. Let's say you make a knife. By the time in the Middle Ages, swords and knives were just mass produced. They're all the same. Back 50,000 years ago, everybody made their own tools and weapons, and they did it specifically to their own specifications, how it was going to balance, how long it was, what curve it was, what color it was it leather, bone, whatever, stone, whatever. And they got to show us all this, and it was all a creative process, again, by the spirit, because in the present moment, and they put their whole self into these things and created them. And that's the kind of thing that will make you feel alive. And it's based off, you have purpose. If you want to check my video on purpose back in 2015, it's those kinds of things when you have real reasons, like if I don't hunt, I'm going to starve. If I don't build shelter, I'm going to freeze to death. And it may seem harsh, but that's when the spirit comes alive, when things are harsh, when you're in a life or death situation. Pretty much the only way a person is going to encounter their spirit in the Matrix is if they're accidentally end up in a life or death situation. And if you're always in that situation, you're always in your spirit, and that spirit brings life, and you're alive. And things seem like when in the Matrix we're taught that it was so much more primitive and whatever. But then when you're actually there, if you showed them our lives, once they figured out what it was, and didn't get tricked into it like our ancestors did, at least the wise ones would know that it's a trap. But when you're born into it, it's not a trap anymore. It's just a prison cell that we think is freedom. But if you think about it, once there's a piece of technology, you can say, well, you don't have to use it. But if everybody's using it and it shapes your culture and you can't escape that, there's nowhere you can go in the world today that hasn't been explored or dominated some way by humanity. It's not always been the case. But so when we do invent things or change things, they do have changes that we can't ignore. I guess maybe the Amish people try to do that, but it does change things. And you could say technology, the Industrial Revolution gave us production power, huge production power. But think of all the shitty things it caused, like pollution. You got people on farms now working 18-hour days or 80-hour weeks, just to grow enough food where they might not starve as long as they get a good harvest. And like, how much worse is that? Because there's no purpose to that. It's just the same thing over and over again, and it's a soulless life. Or you could wake up every day and go hunting or go fishing. These are things that a lot of men will do just for fun, largely for the reasons I'm talking about. You go hunting, go fishing, or you forage for whatever, berries, because there's not agriculture at this point. And it's all in the present moment, so you're not worried about anything. You keep track of the time by the sun and the moon for the months, and sun for the day, and then stars for the seasons, and you're in the flow of things. It's all about intuition. And if you can even like exist in the present moment just for a little bit and feel what it's like to make decisions based off intuition, it feels a lot better. Like, it feels good. And just to be that way all the time, because you say, oh, they're only going to live 30 years. But if you're in the present moment, that never even occurs to you. And then when you finally do die, you're not alive anymore, so it doesn't bother you then either. And then you can be like, well, it bothers us because we know what's going to happen to them. But that's not being in the present moment, and you're not them. So you're not going to be happy. It's a piece of discontent because you're looking in the future. Check out the video on science discontent. Anyway, I have no idea how long this video is going to be. Dude, as soon as I stop this video, I'm going to think of like 3 other things that happened back then that just blow your mind. One of them, if you talk about science manifestation, when the men went hunting, they knew what they were going to catch before they went out there. In the present moment, they were able to manifest almost the exact specification of what they were looking for, the kind of animal that they were going to encounter, and they killed it. But it wasn't just out there waiting for them, before they woke up that morning, or, a week before, it grew up. It's like a 4-year-old animal. 2 years ago it was doing something or whatever. And it's not like that. It's like when you manifest things now and you find it, and would it be there if you weren't looking for it? It's exactly that kind of thing. Because like, we'll think of a forest, like where, if you search for berries, like there's berries here and berries there or whatever. But in actuality, when they're doing these things, they find berries, but the berries wouldn't have been there had they not been looking for them. You can't say that. But in the present moment, that's how things work. There's always an abundance because they don't look into the future thinking, is there enough, is there not enough? They just know it is, because that's just how it's always been, until we got too good at surviving, started getting hierarchy and putting people above us, and then suppressing and people trying to control us, and adding agriculture for extra population and trapping people that way, and then on and on and on and on and on. And honestly, you think about the pharaohs in Egypt, they had 18 dynasties stretched on for thousands of years. So even after that, like you talk about 50,000 years of living in the present moment, but then you've got thousands of years in hierarchy before you even came to technology. And then if you think about what we have now, just the fact that this phone I'm talking into, the worst possible thing that could happen for the human brain was TV. And then you're like, well, I guess that's as bad as it gets. No, I'll tell you what, let's take a TV and make sure everyone has one in their pocket all the time, recording everything you say, even if you don't want it to. And if you don't have your phone, someone's going to have their phone recording everything you say. And we all know it's true, so it's just ridiculous. Anyway, it's bad. It's really bad. And honestly, the way you put up with it is you just don't think about it. It's like, you're in the Matrix, whatever. If you want to get out of it, go be a hermit. But nobody wants to do that. Like, the fact that I'm a man means I don't want to, there's just things that I don't, doing by myself. I wouldn't be able to do by myself. Anyway, so there's that. Anyway, yeah, if you have more questions about this, it's such a fascinating topic. And once you, if you believe everything I'm saying, you can take the thought experiment and being like, what would it be like back then? What would they have to do? What would the communities be like? Basically everything I've taught you about. And then, because it's a whole new world. It's a whole new world, or old world, that doesn't exist anymore. And the Matrix, our society, is making sure it doesn't exist, because there's any places, like in the Amazon, where there might be villages that do this, probably aren't. It's stamping them out. The Amazon is being set on fire, so we're just, destroying the environment. Not necessarily for this reason, but if there was a way to do this, the world's been populated enough now. There's just you're just going to encounter whatever the Matrix is, whatever I'm saying, whatever that thing is with the technology and the society and the culture is pretty much everywhere now. So you can't go anywhere old. Pretty much the only thing you left to explore is maybe in the ocean, but you can't live down there. So anyway, I'm rambling on and on. I don't know what I'm gonna title this, but this is Steve, Rescape 2.0. I hope this made sense. This stuff really was like, holy shit, when I found it. I hope you had the similar experience. Definitely go look it up now. I mean, if you don't believe me, you can just follow up on your own. It's real. Like, I guarantee you it's real. Check it out. Okay, Steve, Rescape 2.0. Take care.